Welcome to the Luna Holistic Podcast. I'm your host, Geneva Robbins, and every month on this podcast, we'll talk about Reiki, as well as answering your questions on all things spiritual. We are gratefully located in Calgary in Treaty 7 territory. Thank you all and welcome to the show. Hello and welcome to the Luna Holistic Podcast. My name's Geneva Robbins, and today we will be chatting about returning to self-care routines. So if you found that your self-care has slipped, do not worry and do not beat yourself up. That is a normal part of a meditation routine or self-healing care or doing any kind of work that helps you feel good. It's normal to have phases where you are in a good rhythm and then when you fall out of that rhythm. And then this podcast is really about how do you get back into that routine in a way that is also nourishing and not adding more pressure. So that's where we're at today. Before we jump into that, I'd love to just do a little collective breath of gratitude wherever you happen to be doing. If you can, just give yourself a moment to settle into this short little meditation. If you're driving, keep your eyes open or pause until you can safely return. But everybody else, if you can take a few moments to tune your awareness inward to your heart. Just take a few gentle breaths into that space inside you, into your core and your deep wisdom. And just give this a few gentle, settling breaths as your energy anchors deeper within your body, flows down your legs, connecting through your feet deep into the earth. And just take a big sigh of relief into that wisdom, grace, and support that's always within Mother Earth, always supporting you. And allow that energy to rise up, supporting your roots, supporting your body, growing tall, spreading through your whole body, expanding your breath through your chest and shoulders, and let it flow radiantly around your aura. When you inhale, receive all of that gratitude from the energy, just for your simple existence. The universe and the earth are grateful for you. In each exhale, send out a wave of gratitude. So each inhale and exhale is a flow of gratitude, giving and receiving. Wonderful. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Ah, wonderful. Well done, you. You just did some self-care. Check. Check that off the list. Listening to this podcast is doing your self-care. It is. It has to be. Because it's a moment you just took just now, even if you just let the words wash over your nervous system, it still is going to have an effect to settle you into a state of peace and calm, which is the name of the game. The reason we're doing all this work on our self-care and well-being is so that we can feel better, even just the tiniest little bit. So anything that makes you feel good and nourished and joyful and rooted and grounded, that is all part of the work you're doing. And it all counts and it all adds up. And even if you don't have tons of time for your self care, it's okay. Even just a second, a mindful moment, just one single breath is enough to start shifting your energy. And if you take enough of those breaths and enough of those moments and you sprinkle them through your day and you make it gentle and easy, you start having a more flexible attitude towards your self care. So then on your busiest day, you still feel like you are recharging your energy in some meaningful way. And, that self care could be as simple as just tucking yourself into bed early, right? So maybe you're not doing your full meditation practice or you're not doing your full Reiki self healing like you would normally. Maybe you want a full half hour and 3 hours to journal, and that's what hits the reset button for you. And that's great. And think about having these small little breaths, small little moments that you're doing throughout your day. So then you're not feeling like you need to wait until life slows down or you have a big chunk of time. It can be really short little bursts of care. So that's my biggest thing of like making it simple and easy and something that you can do on no matter what kind of day it is. So tying it to routines that are already pretty much set in stone. So we think of like habits as things that we have to practice or we're used to, but there's lots and lots of things about our behaviors as we go through our day that are actually habits because and we know that they're habits because not everybody in the world does them in the same way. So if you live in North America, you probably sleep in a bed. And you probably sleep in the same bed if you live in the same house every day. And you probably even sleep on the same side of that same bed every single day. And you're probably not flipping which side your pillow is on of that side of the bed. So there's lots of things that are probably very consistent and very set in your routine, and maybe things that you don't think of as being part of a habit. But it is, you're sleeping on the bed in the same place with the same configuration, usually pretty much every single day of the year. And so you can build in extra bits of self care onto those really, really solid routines and behaviors. So it's almost like you just attach them on to something that's already really steady. So, one of my favorite things is I know I am going to sleep in a bed at some point in the day. I will lie myself down somewhere. And so I will do affirmations. I will do a little bit of grounding or meditation just as I'm falling asleep. And then when I wake up, in between my sort of snooze buttons or before I want to really get up, I might do a little bit of Reiki self healing. And then when I wake up, when I put my feet on the ground, I use that as a moment to ground myself because it's the first moment my feet have made contact with the floor. And so I allow myself to ground whatever got stirred up over that night. And then I go through the rest of my day and maybe that's it. Maybe that's the only self-care I had time for that day because it was a busy day. Maybe I'm dealing with a lot of things. Maybe my schedule is packed. I know that I have that solid set of self-care in the morning and self-care in the evening, even if it's just a few seconds before I'm falling asleep or a few, moments while I'm getting up and I'm starting my day. I know I've got my sort of bookends on my morning and evening. And the reason I shared that part of my practice is because that's really what's worked for me. But look at your routine. Maybe there's things like when you're getting ready in the morning, maybe there's a moment where you can include some affirmation work in the mirror. If you're looking in the mirror anyway, you could then use that time to just repeat a few affirmations. I also like to look for cues or reminders throughout my day, things that are pretty common as a way of like reminding myself about my energy, to shift back into a state of presence. And one of the cues that I use is going through a doorway or going from one room or energetic space to another energetic space. I take a few moments before I cross those thresholds. Even if it's just as I'm going, I will just take a breath as I go from one room to another, just acknowledging that I'm in a new energetic space. So I might, as a way to remind myself to ground and to pay attention to my aura. So when I, get into my car, that's going from the outside to the inside. And when I leave the car, and it's going from the inside to the outside. And then when I go into whatever space or go through into my home, that's going into another space. And when I go from room to room, each room has its own energy and it's another doorway. So what ends up happening is I have so many little tiny micro moments to notice, to take a pause, to take a breath. Um, in some schools of Buddhism, they invite a bell. So anytime there's a bell or a chime or a notification on your phone, or you notice any noise, it's a moment of mindfulness, of being present, where you can come back to that present moment and take, a moment to regroup and reground and those sorts of areas where you are invited into your practice. I sort of think of it as like look for invitations where the universe is guiding you to your well-being practice. And sometimes those invitations are sweet, like noticing, birds outside your window and just watching them frolic. It could be also uncomfortable invitations to practice. So sometimes when we are in a state of disarray and discomfort, oh boy, does that push you to do your meditation. I know it does for me. So I try to look for as many joyful reminders to meditate. So I don't need as many of those uncomfortable reminders to meditate. But, if I'm in any state of disturbance or things are happening and they're rocking my boat, I use those as cues to return to my practice. When you're returning to your practice, there's a couple of things that will really help you. So one thing that I really, really, really recommend is dismantle shame mountain. So sometimes what can happen is if we have a regular meditation routine or a regular exercise routine or eating healthy or drinking water, whatever it is that you are doing that's benefiting your self-care, if we slip or slide or tumble down and we just don't do that self care for days or weeks or months or maybe years, we can judge ourselves and shame ourselves. So we, um, create this wall or this mountain of shame every time we think of coming back to our practice. So if you haven't meditated for a week and you're feeling kind of, and it's gross and you don't like that you haven't meditated, but you somehow can't get yourself to meditate. And you think about making yourself meditate more than you're actually meditating. And you can substitute any other self-care practice for that. you're thinking more about going to the gym than you're actually in the gym. You are pushing yourself and beating yourself up for feeling sluggish or lazy or uh, unmotivated or, disorganized or whatever mean thing your shame gremlins are calling you. It's a funny thing because that same pusher that's pushing you and beating you up on not doing your practice is actually this, in my view, is the same voice that's preventing you from going in the first place. Oh, it's going to be too hard. Oh, you never go. Oh, you're too tired. You don't need to do it today. Oh, you never get anything done. It argues on both sides of this equation. And the main thing is to notice that this is shame operating. If it's calling you names or it's got this sort of harshness to it, or you feel like I just need to push myself, even though I'm completely exhausted and all of these things are going haywire in my life. And I just have to beat myself up to get anything done. The first thing is to pause because I love Brene Brown's work and I love what she says in many of her books and TED Talks and things is that shame isn't a motivator of change. Shame actually solidifies our progress. So if we have shame, it's the fastest way to get nothing done. So what we need to do instead is, again, using Brene Brown's tools, is that what eliminates shame is empathy. And it's not the same as letting yourself off the hook and, being slack or whatever. Empathy is putting where you've been in context and being as kind and friendly to yourself as you would to anybody you care about. So if your very best friend said, "Oh, I haven't meditated for a week and I feel awful and I'm blah, 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 blah," they say all of their shame story, calling themselves names and putting themselves down for not doing their thing. What you'd probably say to your friend, because you're a kind person, if you're listening to this, you'd probably say, "Oh, I know it sucks, but it's okay. You can start small. You can do little bits." It's like, now you would be gentle and affirming and encouraging, and you wouldn't add more on to, you would also probably say, well, it makes sense that your practice has slipped. Look at all of the things that you've been dealing with. Look at all of the things that you've had to manage and handle. That's a lot. That's a lot of new things. That's a lot of new energy. Can you just give yourself a little grace and space here? You'd be kind and affirming. And what I'm encouraging you to do is be your own kind friend. So be kind and encouraging and put the slip in your practice in a gentle context. Look at the whole of what's going on in your life. And part of it may be things that you are dealing with personally. Part of it might be that you're holding enormous space for others or the change that's happening in the world. It could be many, many things. It could be physiological. It could be, you are affected by the weather and when it's dark outside in the morning and night, when you get up and go to bed, you might be really affected by that season energy. You might have other things going on in your body, in your mind, in your world that are overwhelming you and disrupting your routines. Sometimes it's hard, even in joyful disruptions can disrupt our routines. So if you've, gone on a trip or you've got holidays coming up or, you've been really busy with social gatherings, that's okay. Those are really joyful things, but it does mean that maybe you aren't doing your same regular practice. Like maybe you aren't doing your 20-minute run every day. Maybe you're only doing a bit of stretching or something like that. So put it all in a context and give yourself some room and space. So be empathetic and kind, reduce that shame mountain. So I think just push it all aside. It doesn't matter what you did yesterday, and it doesn't matter what you're going to do tomorrow. This is the moment of your practice. So, what small thing can you do right now or in the next 5 minutes that's demonstrating to your inner child that you are taking care of that small being? You're taking care of your body, you're taking care of your emotions, you're taking care of your mind, you're taking care of your spirit. What's one tiny little action that will show, that will be sort of like a way that you can show that inner part of you that you matter to you. And, so letting go of all of the shame and judgment of what happened in the past, just set it all aside. It's over. It's done. Yesterday is completely finished. It is gone. Tomorrow, who knows what is going to happen tomorrow? Right now, this moment, that's the one you've got. And it's enough. And you are enough. And you're doing just fine. I see you. It's been hard. It's been really hard, hasn't it? It's all been really hard, and it's okay. It's okay that it's been hard. It's been okay that you've been overwhelmed. It's okay. I'm here with you now. And now let's see if there's some small, gentle way that you can move forward. What's one tiny little thing that comes up for you right now, just as you're listening to this, in this breath? What's one small thing that you can do for 5 minutes after you listen to this episode? Maybe it's journaling for 5 minutes. Maybe it's getting ready for bed. Maybe it's scheduling something for tomorrow, getting your thoughts organized about what's on the list, getting all of your thoughts out of your head and onto the paper. So journaling. Maybe it's doing some affirmation work. Just really, really simple, just a few minutes. And then when the timer dings, you stop and it's okay. And it's enough. And then tomorrow, you'll do another 5 minutes and that's okay. And that's enough. And then you move on. You know, um, in Reiki, we have this Reiki ideal or Reiki principle, which is do your work honestly, which is your self-care work, your meditation practice, the work that you need to do to keep your channel clear. And it's part of that work is not just doing the meditation, but also every other part that is nourishing and helps you progress or helps you expand your energy or nourish your body, your mind, your soul, your spirit, your emotions. Any little tiny thing. And that includes being kind to yourself. That's showing yourself kindness is also doing the work. So just giving yourself a little bit of space and a little bit of grace, and then making the start up small, tiny, and downhill. So if there's a block or a barrier, it's like think about our bodies move in tracks, in energy tracks, right? Like just like I said, like we usually, sleep on the same side of the bed, and we usually have the same setup. There's these parts of our routine that are usually really solid, and even if we travel, we usually will set things up to sort of return to that sort of snug little energy pattern and trail. And so the ones that we do consistently, we keep returning to because there's a really strong flow of rhythm and energy. And it's also tends to be fairly simple. So imagine if instead of having a clear bed, you had to like move your dresser, your dining table off of your bed every day to go to bed. Maybe that pattern would be disrupted because you'd have to do all of this big heavy lifting, moving all of these objects off of the bed so that you could sleep there. And that routine, if it is difficult, or we say in our mind, this is going to be hard. It's going to be hard. It's going to be painful. Oof, the first time I do this, it's going to be awful. Or we feel like we have to catch up or do our homework, or if we haven't gone to the gym for a week, we might feel like instead of exercising for 20 minutes, we might feel like, oh, I got to exercise for an hour and do extra weight, and that is almost a surefire recipe to have sore muscles and be in pain. And in some ways is almost like a punishment, which again is that shame mountain thing again, which is like, no, what if you just got yourself there? What if the win is putting on your shoes and getting yourself to the place where self-care happens? What if you rewarded yourself for starting rather than the quality or how long or the results? You just rewarded yourself for the hardest part of any practice, which is the beginning. You gave yourself a sticker for beginning your meditation, not for completing it or for getting anywhere in particular, or even feeling calmer, or having a calm mind. You don't put that pressure on the practice. You just get yourself started, get yourself one step moving and one step moving and one step moving. So think of it as like, how can you get friction? Can you get anything that is making it more difficult, and you have to put more energy into the work or the practice than it needs. So maybe something like, okay, you like to go to the gym after work, and that's the best time in your day. And from the past that if you get yourself home, then no gymming is going to happen. You're not going to exercise because you're exhausted and you need to tend to other routines. So instead of getting yourself home and then getting yourself to the gym, what if instead you took that friction out and you have your gym bag packed and in the car, in a space where you're calm, so at least that little part of the routine is downhill. And then maybe having a little cue or a reminder. So maybe instead of putting your gym bag in your trunk, you put it on the passenger side of the seat or in a place where you will see it when you get out next to where you grab your lunch or your bags for work or something like that. So then it's like you have this little tiny cue. And it's the same thing with meditating, so placing an energy around the space where you're meditating. So again, it's like if your meditation area is piled and stacked with clutter, then it's going to be hard to want to sit there, right? Or if there's no place to sit, then it's going to be more difficult because you then, in order to meditate, you have to move all of this friction out of your way before you get there. And again, don't beat yourself up for putting stuff on your in the way, because in some ways we do those things as a way of protecting ourselves from emotions or change or transformation or things being different. Sometimes our practice is uncomfortable, but it is necessary. It is helpful, and it ultimately does make you feel better over time. So making it small, making it simple, getting rid of any form of resistance or friction, either in your mind or in your physical area, and being really, really gentle, just being curious about the whole thing and just sort of go, oh, isn't that interesting? I didn't do my meditation that day. I wonder what I can shift. Can I tinker with how I'm approaching my practice? Can I make it smaller? Can I make it simpler? One reason I practice in when lying down in my bed is because I sit and I stand for a big portion of my day. And and so coming after maybe sitting for a long period of time, I really don't, my body doesn't want to sit anymore. And so it feels really uncomfortable to sit because I've already been sitting. So lying down gives me this opportunity to stretch out. And in that stretching out, that's when relaxation can come in. So even things like that where you're like, "Oh, it's really uncomfortable," or something scratchy, or, there's some part of the rhythm, like I'm trying to have a moment of stillness when my kids are still awake. It's like, "Oh, I'm not gonna try to push the river. Maybe I'm going to wait until they're actually settled and in their space. And I'm going to just like take a few moments in between their bedtime and my bedtime. And I'm going to take that moment, even if it's just 2 minutes, to sit and breathe or doodle or draw or color or do something that is no screen time, that is, a place of not just uh, unplugging, but reconnecting. So, like plugging into source. How can you plug into a universal, never exhausted form of energy? One thing that is an interesting part of our habits that we tend to, especially speaking of technology, that we tend to always do is we always plug in our phones or our devices when they are getting low on battery. And because we do that every day, most devices need to be plugged in once a day or put on the charger. If you do wireless charging, you have to put energy into the system at least once a day. And so think of it that way, as that could be a cue of like, I'm plugging in my phone and now I'm going to use that opportunity as a cue of like, oh, right, I need to be plugged in too. And what would plug me in right now? What would help me feel connected and peaceful? Is it something as simple as holding a crystal that you really like? I've got a crystal in my hands right now. Is it something as simple as picking up a pen and doodling an affirmation? Is it something like crafts, doing some knitting or something that's mindful? Maybe it's not sitting still, but being active, like tidying your house or setting things up so that everything looks really pretty and nice. Um, Maybe it's something like, changing your sheets on your bed because you love the feeling of getting into crisp sheets. Maybe it's something like just lighting a candle or some incense or just some scent that helps anchor you. Maybe it's just something like making yourself warmer or making yourself a cup of tea and just sipping it really mindfully. All of these things can build together, and you kind of end up layering all of these different aspects of your self care. So then there's more flex in the system. So if one of them goes, or you have a very busy, very stressful, very emotionally exhausting day, you have this sort of well-practiced base of support that you can return to. And that can be sort of a comforting thing. So when everything else goes sideways and your life is in upheaval, you have this anchor to come back to again and again and again. And it's also what I love about weaving my self-care into many, many micro moments in the day is that I get many, many opportunities and invitations to practice. And so then instead of waiting for ideal conditions to do my practice, waiting until everything's calm and peaceful and there isn't a million things on the go, which just seems to never happen. It's like you are instead hunting for those moments and expanding them wherever you can. So instead of waiting for a moment to do your self-care, you're proactively looking for any sort of little invitation from the universe to do your practice. So anytime you're waiting, anytime you are in line, anytime you're waiting for a light in traffic to shift from red to green, you're not going anywhere. Take a few breaths, keep your eyes open, be alert, but use it as a moment for mindfulness. Taking a few moments to read, a page of a book you love, taking a few moments to see where you can gather back these little 5 minutes of time here and there. So if got little ones, it's like nap times are just sacred space, right? Like wait till the house settles. And then as soon as it settles, like go straight into your practice. And also, while the house is busy, see if you can find little moments to just take a pause, a breath, some grounding. If little ones are upset and crying, that's the best time to practice your own grounding, because then you can model grounding for them. And then, any other moment of joyfulness, anytime you notice anything beautiful happening in nature, at all in the slightest. A bird flies by your window, squirrels are playing outside, you see a really cute dog walk by when you're driving your car, you are witnessing the snow or the rain falling, or you're looking at leaves blowing around, or you are watching a sunrise or a sunset, or noticing the moon and how it might shift across the sky over the course of a few hours. Just sort of little tiny moments where you're noticing much slower energy in nature. That can also be a beautiful moment to pause and to return to your practice. So be gentle, start small, reduce your friction, and then come back to it again and again and again. It doesn't matter how many times you've meditated or how long you've meditated, just come back one more time. The power of the practice is always in returning. So just strengthen your returning muscle, be gentle. Falling away from your practice is just as useful to your practice as doing it, because if you slip for a week, you really notice what it does for you. It feels terrible. Life can go sideways really quickly when you're not doing those key pieces of your self-care, and you begin to notice what matters to you. So for me, a big part of my practice is writing and journaling with my team, and giving myself space and time on the page. And if I don't do that, or if I let it slide too many days in a row, the thing, I start losing my anchor. So even just, picking up a little tiny scrap of paper and just drawing and doodling and letting whatever is inside flow out, those things can reset and rebalance you. And you begin to notice, based on how you're feeling, what is sort of non-negotiable forms of your self-care? What are non-negotiable parts of your habit? So that would only be disrupted in very extreme circumstances, like sleeping in a bed. You might not always sleep in a bed. You might have other times where you miss sleep or you stay up all night, but that's going to be more of an exception than a rule. And your tendency will be to return to that joyful practice and not be hard on yourself that you had that disruption. You just going to go back to bed, right? So if you can do the same thing with your practice, with your meditation and self-healing and affirmation work and journaling, if you can just be as gentle about the return as you can, it's more likely that you're going to return, and then it's more likely that you're going to continue, and you'll be able to be gentle and play with your practice and see what matters, see what works. And you can also have some space and allow your practice to breathe a little bit and let it flow into many more parts of your day than maybe you've been giving yourself credit for. Because I also suspect, if you're listening to this, you actually have been doing a lot of self-care and you have been doing a lot of work. Give yourself a big pat on the back, because it's not easy. There's been a lot of things going on. And anyway, I believe in you and I think you're doing great. Keep on at it. And until next time, bye-bye. Thank you for joining us on the Luna Holistic Podcast. We're so grateful that you are here. If you've got a question, we'd love to hear from you. Go to lunaholistic.com/podcast and we'll answer you in an upcoming episode. Be sure to subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And also please rate, because you never know where your little 5 stars will go to shine light into somebody's heart today. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.